This is my 61st video on my work with OO gauge. See part 1 of this series for my reasons for getting into OO gauge when I already had a lot invested in working in N gauge and I didn't really have space available for a large, fully operational OO gauge layout. Also see my lengthy series on my N gauge railway modelling for smaller and more complex scenery and smaller scale trains running. This part is the 35th dealing with my third layout made using mainly Hornby EZ Track. See the prior video, part 27, for my reasons for wanting to try a Hornby EZ Track layout when I already had an OO gauge layout using Bachmann EZ Track. This part deals with the little Hoardings Bill Poster kit from Wills. There's not really an awful lot to this kit, but when I saw it I thought it would be a fun little addition to the layout. Here's how it comes in a blister pack on a card. When the kit is unpacked, you have 2 sprues of green plastic parts for the large hoardings. The boards actually come already detached from the sprues, as this was necessary to fit them into the pack. 1 sprue of white plastic parts for the bill poster, his ladder and bucket, and a couple more small poster boards, and 3 sheets of printed paper posters, not decals, just printed paper. Unfortunately, the paper sheets had to be folded to fit into the package, which means that some of the printed posters will have fold lines in them. Here I have taken all of the parts off their sprues and cleaned them up with knife and emery board. The Wills plastic parts are generally very well cast without flash, although there were some rather visible mould join lines on the figure and the bucket that needed a bit of work to smooth out. The other little signs at bottom right came from a previous Wills kit for platform accessories. There weren't any instructions with this kit and none were really needed. What you see here is the back of one of the large hoarding boards and one of the frames for supporting it. Presumably the bar of the frame is supposed to glue to the back of the shorter vertical bars on the back of the board. Here I have glued the supporting frames in place on one of the boards. It wasn't too difficult to do, but if I'd been designing this kit I would have had the supporting frames fit into slots, which would have provided for more positive assembly. Now I've glued both large boards to their supporting frames. It's necessary to balance the board on something whilst the glue sets, due to the way the frames stick out across the board. And here are those boards stood up as they will be with their posters attached. I painted the ladder, bucket and figure, not my favourite task, fine brush painting. It's challenging to do a decent job of painting tiny OO gauge figures, though N gauge are worse, of course. I went with silver for the bucket. I gave the figure blue overalls. I let the front of Bill's overalls dry, then painted the back. I say Bill because his name has to be Bill Stickers, as in the old sign Bill Stickers will be prosecuted, and its concomitant graffiti edition Free Bill Stickers. I finished the other side of the ladder, painted the handle and the inside of the bucket, and did my best with Bill's shoes, hat, brush, etc. The printed signs that came with the Wills kit weren't too bad at all, and I certainly could have made use of them, although the only sign they provided that would fill the whole of one of the large hoarding boards was for the film The Silent Partner. Well, I guess you have to give them credit for including a historic film poster, but The Silent Partner was a 1923 silent film, so it would have hardly been likely to be on exhibit in my 1930s period, since by then the talkies had come in. I decided to make my own posters and searched around for suitable signs that might have been on display in the British Midlands in the 1930s. Here's a collection of signs that I found advertising products and films with a patriotic Buy British poster thrown in. The films included here did all come out in the 1930s, but ultimately I decided not to include a film poster. Apart from anything else, they do rather pin you to a specific year. These were the posters that I actually went with, full-size posters for HP Sauce and the Austin 7 car for the large hoardings, and posters advertising Bovril, Guinness, Knights Castile soap and Swan Vista matches for the smaller boards. I used my standard technique of scanning the plastic parts themselves at 600 dpi, fitting images over the scanned images of the parts in a graphics program on my PC, and then printing out the results at 600 dpi. I spray painted all of the boards a dull brown colour. I used CA glue to attach the bucket to Bill's left hand and then to attach Bill to the ladder. Perhaps not entirely naturalistic, but it was the best that I could do. I cut out all of my printed posters and glued them to the boards using rocket card glue. Bill is just leaning up against that hoarding not glued on. Incidentally, the pictures in this video were all taken with my new Panasonic Lumix camera, as my 10-year-old Olympus camera was starting to act up. I was very happy with the Olympus camera and took thousands of pictures and quite a lot of video with it. But the current model of the same camera, the Olympus Tough, was going for over $600 Canadian with the tax, and that just seemed too much to me for my relatively modest requirements. So I went with the Panasonic Lumix TS30, which had features a little better than my old Olympus Tough from 10 years ago, and went for around 200 Canadian. I couldn't decide here whether to use the macro mode without flash or to photograph from a distance with flash. This is with the macro mode and no flash. Actually, both seem to come out okay. I put the Swan Vesta sign on the side wall of the Super Quick Railway Hotel. The Bovril poster and the mineral water poster on the board from the earlier kit went onto the side walls of the Metcalfe Village shop and cafe. The small Guinness and Knights Castile posters went onto the front of the cafe yard wall. The large HP sauce hoarding went onto the corner by the cafe. I did have to stick it down to stop it falling over. Finally, the Austin 7 poster, with Bill just finishing putting it up, went on the corner by the station lodge, which was built from the Super Quick Greystones farm kit. And here's a final view across the layout, including all of the signs. And yes, I really need to do something about vegetation and some fences and walls. I almost wish I'd put a foam surface on the board, as the MDF is extremely tough stuff and so very hard to drill or cut into for fence posts, trees, etc.